whenever I didn't do something perfectly, I always beat myself up. Or if I made a mistake, I would always hold on to that mistake. And I would just keep holding on to it, holding on to it, and holding on to it. And because I was holding on to it, or angry about it, or disappointed in myself about it, it kept me making more mistakes. So, here I was, hanging on to the past and worrying about the future and making more mistakes in the future. And what I found out was that I was never living in that day. And it's tough to see the messages from God that we talked about earlier if I'm not even present in today. My mind is in the past and my mind is in the future, but it's not in today. And I can't keep straddling that fence, because we all know that you straddle that fence going back and forth, you're gonna slip off that fence and you're gonna hurt. You're gonna hurt yourself, and that's what I was doing on a daily basis. And the more guilt and the more shame that built up, the harder it became to live with myself. It just became too difficult, and that weight starts wearing you down and wearing you down and wearing you down, and you start beating yourself up more and more. Despite beating up them, those, and theys. I like to say that them people, those people, they, if they would only done what you told them to do, or if them people wouldn't have did that to you, then you might have been successful doing this, or the outcome might have been different, or those people. So you start deflecting your anger or reasons why you do stuff onto other people when it may not have anything to do with those people at all. So from that shame and that guilt and that remorse, it just blocks everything from you, and you can't start seeing the lessons that God wants you to learn. We are all going to make mistakes, all of us, and all we're supposed to do is just try to be a better person the next day. And if we concentrated our efforts more on the effort part and not the result part, it would be a lot better. Life would be a lot better, and definitely a much more simple. Because I always wanted to do things perfectly, and that's just not going to happen. There's no way I could have ever met this self-imposed requirement on myself. It wasn't possible. It wasn't possible at all. And once I started realizing that if I keep my eye just on today, which I can handle, then I can start really grasping some of these lessons and really get a chance to look at some of those miracles that we were talking about. I had done so much harm to people when I was out there in those streets and living that lifestyle of drugging and everything else. That when it was time for me to start cleaning up my act, that was one of those big questions. Like, how could God forgive me? And then I realized that God doesn't make too hard of terms of being in His grace. Not at all. It was me that was holding back. It was me that couldn't forgive me. And I always said, and it's funny because the same way I was blaming everybody else, I was also in a way blaming God. I kept myself from that sunlight because I said that, you know what, there can't be a place like me. There can't be a place in God's grace for somebody like me. And I was absolutely wrong. The issue is that I wouldn't let me sit there because of my shame and my guilt and my remorse from all the past things that I had done to people and that people had done to me. So it's twofold. I mean, I have to look at both of them and understand, and be forgiving of what was done to me, just as I have to also forgive me for my acts. And forgiving me for my acts and what I had done to people was the hardest thing. It was almost like, I didn't want to be happy. And when you really look at it, it's crazy even saying that. How could I want to keep myself from being happy? But believe it or not, I talk to a lot of people, and we are all so much alike in that area, whether it be man, woman, black, white, yellow, brown, whatever color, whatever background that you come from. That shame and guilt and the remorse and what it does to you is universal. It is universal. It is so difficult for us to forgive us. We want to hold on to that so that we have a reason not to be happy. It sounds too easy to say, okay, well, you know what, I forgive me and tomorrow will be a better day. That's about what it takes, and then the next day, of course, actually, the hardest part is actually trying to be just a little bit better. We don't have to make this 180-degree turnaround all in one day. We're not going to be able to do that. But I can be a little bit better of a person the next day, and I can be a little bit better of a person the following day. Because you know what? All God wants is the effort. See, the results we leave to God, and that's, we put so much pressure on ourselves. We set ourselves up for failure. And that's what I'm talking about, is setting ourselves up for failure. We put so much pressure on ourselves that, we're doomed. We're doomed even before we get off the platform or off the porch for even starting on this journey. So we just have to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be a better person. Everything that happened in the past, maybe it was just supposed to happen that way. If I had a chance to live my life over today, I would live my life exactly the same way that I've done. I wouldn't change a thing. If I knew that I would be sitting right here today doing what I'm doing today. God has a plan for all of us. That everybody's plan is different. Obviously, I don't know if you read the book, but please go out and get the book. You can go to Amazon.com. You can get the book, or you can go to my website, Half Black, Half White, Finding Me and My Place in America, and read about what I had done to me and also what people had done to me. But if I would have never, asked God for forgiveness, and especially for all the acts that I had done, and want to, want to keep moving forward, I would never be at this point. But as I was saying, is I would redo my whole life over. And if you read the book, you'll see all the dumb things that I've done. And I shouldn't really say the word dumb. I mean,